Hello, Edwina Murphy-Droomer here, and I want to welcome you to this interview in the series that is all about inspiring and empowering a league of extraordinary mothers. Together, we are on a quest to add a little extra to the ordinary by unlocking your passion, compassion, humour and style. Today, we have with us Kylie Boreham. Kylie is a mama of three, entrepreneur and rebel at heart, and inventor of the world's most powerful underwear. Her purpose-driven business is on a mission to help women to find their power. Welcome, Kylie, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
I am really excited to learn more about your gorgeous undies. When I first saw them in a magazine, they caught my attention 100%. So for the people in our audience that haven't had the pleasure of meeting you yet, could you give us a little story about how you actually came to be creating these amazing undies?
Yeah, sure thing. So I was on parental leave, as so many women do. I've had my third baby, so I was taking my final break from my career, and I'd been very, very ambitious and career focused, probably up until the point I started to have some children. And I guess after my family was complete, there was a feeling of what's next. I was spending a lot of time on that break from work, exploring things that were taking my interests, like superfoods, looking to be more natural and organic in my life. I was interested in natural cleaning products, moving into natural beauty products, and then of course, ethical fashion. And that was a topic that really, really took my interest in starting to learn about the impacts that the fashion industry was having on not just the environment, but also the people that make the garments and the communities that live in the environment where the garments are made. So just learning more and more about that industry, finding brands that were doing the right thing by the people and the planet. And I really started to change the way I was shopping. The business idea really sprung from that. I wanted to find a way to get more people to think about the journey that their garments make before they land in their wardrobe. So began this business planning process where I was looking for an ethical manufacturer that was able to provide certified organic fabrics. And really tying that in is, you know, what can I make unique about this product? Because there certainly are ethical, organic underwear out there on the market, some one or the other, some are both. Yeah. And that's really where Affirmations came to me as something that could be quite unique about the product. So for those that don't know, our product Power Pants, they're each printed with a secret affirmation, and they come with a little affirmation card. And really the story behind that is I've used affirmations in my life for a long, long time to rebuild my confidence after a very violent relationship about 10 years ago. So affirmations were really important to me, tied that into the product, and then thinking more about that journey and personally wanting to give back and support other women that are going through what I had been through, and knowing that, you know, what you need in that time is support and financial support. I also teamed up with a social enterprise in Papua New Guinea, and for every pair of Power Pants sold, we're donating $1 towards female survivors of violence.
Okay. The affirmations are gorgeous, and I love the idea of pulling on undies every morning with a little reminder. So what are some of the affirmations that you found particularly powerful?
Yeah, sure. We started off with just 3. So we had I am brave. That was my personal favorite. Yeah. I am beautiful, and I've got this. And then as we've grown or tested the market a little bit more, we've called out to our followers on social media for some inspiration. So now we have I am loved, I am blessed, I am strong, I am grateful, and I am happy. And we've got a few more on the way.
Yeah, yeah. I think that now more than ever, these undies and these affirmations are going to be super important. When I do this work with women, you know, as a vision building coach, we start first and foremost with who we want to be in the world. And I love introducing women to the idea that we actually get to be whoever we decide we want to be. But it's really easy to say, I am brave, or I am happy, or I am. What I love to encourage people to do is go, if you're going to say, I am brave, how will you know that you're showing up as brave today? What are you going to be doing? And I think that this is a particularly pertinent conversation right now, as we're all sort of going into lockdown and a very different way of living for a little while. We don't know how long. But if you were going to pull on your I am brave undies today, what would be an I am brave thing for you today?
Yeah, look at I am brave is actually, brave is my word of the year, and I feel like, you know, stepping in and starting a business for me felt like a very brave thing to do last year. Putting on my brave pants now, you know, I say it's anything that makes you a little bit frightened and pushes you outside of your comfort zone is where you feel brave. So it's not things like jumping out of an airplane, not always things like that. It can be things like going on a video podcast that, you know, for me, I'm getting more and more used to these sort of things. So they're feeling like a less brave thing to do. But also, you know, for me, sharing my story about my past of with domestic violence has felt like a very brave thing for me to do. But, you know, I always say the reason we do these things that make us feel brave is because when we accomplish something new, we feel the most alive.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I think that the ability to be vulnerable and to share stories that, you know, it takes a lot of bravery to share is not just a gift for you, but a gift for the other women that get to hear that perhaps they're not alone, or to learn from the courage that you took. So, are you happy to share a bit more about that journey for this conversation and what that looked like for you?
Yeah, sure. And, you know, the reason I'm very happy to share this is exactly that reason that you said. It does help other women. And I know, had 10 years ago, I'd seen someone like me sharing their story, it would have given me so much courage and so much hope to know that life can get so much better when you leave a violent relationship. And when I say a violent relationship, mine was not a relationship where there was physical violence through the entire relationship. So there was a lot of, it was an emotional roller coaster for sure. There was a lot of put downs. My confidence was at its lowest at the end of that relationship, and it was a 5-year relationship. It was a long-term relationship. So it was very emotionally abusive. And one thing I often say, a quote that I heard, is that violence doesn't always follow disrespect, but violence always begins with disrespect. And that certainly was the case for me. I didn't feel respected in my relationship. I didn't feel loved, and ultimately I didn't feel safe. So although I'd never been physically hurt up until the very end, I knew that that was a possibility. And so when our relationship ended, he was, you know, feeling, you know, I feel like sometimes when you're in these relationships, they have a sense of control over you. And when you lose your confidence, they don't think that you're ever going to have the strength to walk away. And when they lose that control over you, that's when things can really escalate.
Yeah.
And so I always say a lot to women, you know, you've got to find the strength to leave, but you've actually got to be really careful and make sure that you're safe when you find that strength, because that can certainly make things escalate, as was the case for me.
Yeah.
So our relationship had ended, and we were still living together. I was waiting for a new home to move into, and I guess there was one night where things escalated, and I felt particularly unsafe after that. And one evening he was out, he had taken my mobile phone. I had no way of contacting people. He'd taken my phone and my laptop as well. So I had no way of contacting people. I remember going to a payphone. I called my mum who lived in Melbourne, and I should say I was in Sydney.
Yeah.
So very, very far away. And, you know, she said to me, don't worry, he wouldn't do anything to hurt you. Just go home. And I felt that was my only option. And then, of course, I went to bed, couldn't sleep. And then I heard him beat down the door. I had my bedroom door locked, and, you know, he busted through the door, and I was locked in the house with him for half an hour as he beat me up. So I eventually, I managed to talk him into taking me to the hospital, because I had a bone broken from my face, and it was very obvious, and, you know, my head was hurting with, you know, obviously a lot of punches and things thrown at me, and I was a little bit scared that, you know, I obviously felt like, am I going to survive this time and this attack? And I managed to talk him into taking me to the hospital. And once we went into the car park, I escaped. I ran away. There was a huge crowd of people on the street, and this was, you know, midnight. Huge crowd of people that could hear, you know, the screaming going on in the house. And, you know, I literally ran to the crowd, and then he followed me. And I ran straight to the police and ended up in hospital to, you know, have my face fixed.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So then you were able to go into some sort of protective custody, or what were the steps from there?
Yeah, so he escaped the police at that time. So, I mean, I was very much looked after from there and protected from there. And I think my father took the first flight out of Melbourne the next morning, and he was in hospital with me, and ended up taking me away to a friend's place. But the police managed to track him down, you know, the following afternoon, and he was taken into custody from there.
Oh, that's such a horrendous story. I'm so sad that you went through that. But, you know, what I do know is that we come out the other side of these experiences are different people, and with our own gifts that we get to learn from these experiences. So how do you feel that it's shaped you for the good out the other side?
Yeah, well, I think anybody that has had that near-death experience where you see the possibility of your life coming to an end, and that feels very real, and coming out the other side of an experience like that, you know, you hear the same from people that have been in traffic accidents and cancer survivors. It really changes your outlook on life, and in quite a positive way. I mean, surviving something like that, you feel so lucky that you have the chance at life. And I guess, you know, from that point forward, everyone says to me, you're always so busy, you've got so much on, but I just embrace life. And, you know, I want to do so much. And I guess what has come out of that long term with this business is, you know, it was a long road to recovery. You know, physical scars, they cleared up pretty quickly. I think I had, you know, plastic surgery to put my, you know, bones in my face back together, you know, within a week. That was almost, you know, you couldn't even notice after a month that anything had happened physically. But emotionally, you know, that initial period of feeling, you know, missing a person who had been a big part of your life, them being in prison, you feeling guilty for the role that you played in that. And I know that that's, you know, a very unhelpful way to feel, but it's very hard not to feel that way. And then just, you know, as time goes on, rebuilding your confidence and recognizing that the way that you speak to yourself is really important. And that's, you know, that's one of the biggest things that has come out of my 10 years of recovery, is recognizing that when you tell yourself that you're worthy of love and worthy of happiness, you know, that was just the beginning for me to start rebuilding my life.
Yeah. How we speak to ourselves, the conversations that are going on in our head is so powerful. It's so powerful. And I know we've all heard it, and there's been lots of talk, and people, you know, bring this up all the time. But I think so often when we do hear something a lot, it just becomes a message that goes in one ear and out the other. But actually putting it into practice is something quite different. And obviously the outcome from actually putting it into practice is something quite different. So I love the idea that your underwear is a reminder of those messages and how we speak to ourselves. But, you know, that understanding that comes after such a monumental situation in your life, such a life-changing situation, is that realization that life is now. And it was a message that I talked about a lot last year. We nearly lost my eldest son, and I've had a sister that died and a girlfriend that died from cancer last year. And these situations really highlight the fact that life is right now. It's here, it's today, it's this minute. And what are we choosing to do with it? And once again, with everything that we're facing in the planet right now, having some guidance around how to think about where we are in our lives right now, what we're going to do with our lives right now, today, is golden.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Yeah. So what are some, you know, like we talk in this show a lot about passion, definitely compassion, and then the humor and the style. And I think compassion is particularly pertinent when we get to look at, you know, sometimes it's like, I know I shouldn't get lost in the news feeds and reading everything that's no good. And we get to have compassion for when perhaps we do get lost in that. But shifting our focus to the things that are possible, I would love to look more at where you found the courage to create a business for yourself, to create a business out of a passion. And, you know, this opportunity is now opening up for people who are at home. So if you can share the bravery around how you took that step, I'm sure it's going to be inspiring to people that are listening.
Yeah, sure. And I think a big part of my journey has been Pranay Brown, and you know, she.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, I read her book Daring Greatly. Maybe it was about 5 years ago, and that really changed my life. To think about, do I want to just be a spectator? I definitely don't want to sit in the cheap seats.
Yes.
But do I actually want to get in the arena and make something meaningful of my life? And I guess, you know, my answer to that is hell yes. I want to be in there. I want to do something meaningful with my life. Choosing to go into business, I think a lot of the time it's really a confidence thing. And you know, I actually took the time to do an MBA a few years ago, and I think that really, really helped with my confidence to back myself and do it. But I don't think that that's absolutely a necessary thing to start a business. And a lot of people think you need to go to business school. In actual fact, the most valuable thing that gave to me was confidence. Practically what I have had to do in building the business has had not a lot to do with what I learned in my MBA. I mean, what's important is cash flow. I think that's really important, that you get a good understanding of, you know, how much is it going to cost you to set up this business, and how long can you sustain it until, you know, it establishes itself. You know, that kind of thing is important. But beyond that, it's all things that you can figure out with a little clever Googling. You know, I think that's really important. But, you know, I guess it is for, you know, to your point about passion, it's if you have a great product idea, it's a really good idea to tie in something that you're passionate about. So for example, I'm passionate about my products, but I'm also passionate for the funds that we're raising for female survivors of violence. So, you know, finding whether it is a social enterprise that you can donate a portion of your profits to help fuel that passion about what you're doing. If it's, you know, if your product or service is not something you feel particularly passionate about, you know, that's another way to sort of increase your passion, because you really need it. Because, you know, starting a business it takes a lot of hours. You know, there's a lot of hours where you're not paid. There's a lot of sacrifices that you need to make, and your family, your loved ones need to make a lot of those sacrifices too.
Yeah, it's got to be, I know from experience, it's got to be about something that's bigger than the income. The income is the side effect, but you've got to have that driving passion to move you through the uncomfortable bits. And the other, you know, from my experience, confidence only comes from taking action. You know, I was not confident the first time I turned on a camera and did an interview. The first time I even had to ask somebody that I admired if they wanted to be interviewed. Oh my gosh, if you could see me. Pushing send on that first email. It's like, oh my gosh, why would they want to talk to me, you know? And now I've done well over 100 interviews, but it's, you know, it really only, the first one was okay. So then I had the confidence to do the second one. And so the confidence comes with taking action. You can't wait for the confidence to come and then take action. It works the other way around.
Yeah, that is exactly right. That is exactly right.
Yeah. So I would love to talk a little bit, because this is something that I'm particularly passionate about as well. I would love to talk about the impact of fast fashion, because I think there's been some conversation about it, but not enough. And as somebody who's a passionate op shopper, I like to support slow fashion and recycling, and so definitely organic is a big thing. But if you can talk a bit more about that and why that's your passion, I think that is a conversation I'd love to dive into.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, climate change is very real, and fashion is one of the biggest contributors to carbon emissions. You know, you know, it's using resources, and a lot of the manufacturing is not kind to the environment, and add to that, you know, shipping and moving things around, and ultimately fast fashion is cheap, and we're not paying the full cost. It's actually the environment, and it's usually the garment makers that are paying the cost. So, you know, the garment makers are the other piece of the puzzle here. You know, there's people that are working in horrendous conditions. They've got unsafe work conditions. They're not paid a living wage, and really, you know, the more and more we consume, you know, there's a limit. It's completely unsustainable for the planet to keep producing at that rate, and it's unfair for for people to, you know, be paid unfairly and treated poorly to make clothes that we might wear once or twice and throw away.
I know. I'm just trying to remember. There was a series that came out on the ABC here in Australia that was, I'm just trying to remember what it was called, about fast fashion. And they were, you know, interviewing these teenage girls that wore things once because they couldn't be seen on Instagram, or, you know, to be seen to wear things twice. And I think about all these clothing chains that, you know, pump out these incredibly cheap fashion items, and then we just have this enormous landfill is just absolutely filled with these clothes. It's appalling. It's appalling.
Yeah.
So the more that we can have conversations around this as mums, and, you know, maybe we can set up sort of incentives to perhaps buy things that are, you know, that are more precious and more beautiful and more valued, and so that we, you know, wear them for a much longer period of time and hang on to them. I've got, you know, my mother's going to be 86 this year, and I've got items of clothing that were hers, you know, from 50 years ago that are still gorgeous. So how do we build that culture? And I think, you know, having treasured pieces.
That's definitely a way. And I think when you are shopping, it is, you know, looking for something that is going to last the test of time, something that's made with quality, and, you know, start looking for companies that are making products ethically and sustainably as possible. You know, more and more companies are doing these sort of things. And we should be asking, you know, our clothing providers these questions, you know, who made my clothes and what are they made of? It's really, really important. And when we start choosing brands that put the planet and people ahead of profits, you know, it's you know, as consumers, we've got the power to change that by, you know, voting with our dollars.
I've seen you talk about stepping into our power as women. And once again, this is one of these phrases that we perhaps hear, and it's like, it sounds lovely, but what does that actually look like? And this is just one thing that we can do to make a radical difference in our families, in our communities, and across the globe, and affecting climate change. And it seems like such a simple thing, but it's actually really powerful.
It's really recognizing, you know, the power that you have as a consumer to change the world. You really can.
Fantastic. I love it. And it's supporting quite often, you know, in what you've done, and certainly looking at perhaps local providers that are creating fashion pieces, it's supporting other women in business, or other, it might be men as well. But supporting, you know, small businesses and other people that are creating businesses. I love the idea that, you know, with what's going on at the moment, people might actually start sewing stuff at home, and it could be simple things, or looking for, you know, if there's people listening to this that are actually great with a sewing machine, pull out your video and show people how it's done, stick it on YouTube, and you started a business.
Exactly.
So how did you start the process? You know, you had an idea and then you attached it to a passion and created a product. But what were the first kind of steps in actually, I can imagine somebody saying, well, you know, I would love to make lovely t-shirts with messages, but what's the first step to actually making that happen?
And I think the first brave action for me was actually sitting down and writing a business plan. And that's certainly not the way you have to go about it, but I felt, you know, that was the first step for me. And from there it was finding a manufacturer. So, you know, I remember sharing my business idea with my dad, who worked his entire career in the manufacturing industry, and he laughed at me and he said, good luck finding an ethical manufacturer. You know, it's and admittedly he's been retired for almost a decade now. So, you know, the good news is that manufacturers are raising standards, and It wasn't easy, but I was able to find a manufacturer that had the social credentials and were able to share with me an audit report to assure me that, you know, that they were paying their staff fairly and they had good working conditions.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the more as conscious consumers that we say we're not buying this, we actually want that, the more we're going to put, you know, actually start to have a say in how many ethical businesses are out there, isn't it?
You're right. Yeah. I mean, that's the power as well to change that whole industry. You know, the more that the brands are going to manufacturers and demanding certifications and evidence that they're doing the right thing, you know, the more manufacturers are going to go out to meet those standards.
Yeah. So I think I want to share that, you know, before we push record, the idea of bravery, you know, perhaps there's an alter ego that lives in your house.
Yes, there sure is.
That comes out occasionally to inspire your children. Would you like to introduce us?
Mrs. B, my alter ego, has been suddenly homeschooling this week as part of the COVID-19 pandemic. As many mamas out there have found themselves suddenly teachers on top of all of the other roles that we have.
Yeah.
So Mrs. B comes out to homeschool my children. I ask them, this is what she looks like. She's got she's bright red hair.
Yeah.
Yes. And I do ask my children to call me Mrs. B during school hours.
For those that are tuning in on the podcast and actually not watching this, I invite you to find the video version because it's awesome. It's awesome. Love it. So I had a coach a long time ago who really, his name is Todd Herman, and he talks a lot about alter ego and how we can really step into a different way of being with this alter ego. So I think it's just super fun and I love it. I love the idea of it. Where did it come from?
Oh, I just, look, I was just messing around with the kids when I knew I'd be homeschooling them and just suggested that maybe they should call me Mrs. B. And I thought, well, if they're going to call me Mrs. B, I've got to change the way I look. So that's how it began. But they've taken it on board, and during during school hours when I am their teacher, that's what they call me. And I wear this terribly itchy thing all day. It's the novelty is wearing off real fast.
Is it? Yeah.
This is day 3.
Yeah, okay. It's great. I think, you know, we get to be so much more playful and humorous, and it is just going to make the world of difference to how we cope with what's changing in the world right now. And the idea that we're going to be at home with our families in a much more confined space for much longer periods of time. And if we can't find our humor and our joy and our play in that space, then I think we're going to be in trouble. So I love this idea. And I would highly encourage mums out there to dive into this and have their teacher the teacher alter ego. And I want to see pictures. Maybe we can get people to tag us on Instagram or Facebook or somewhere and tag, you know, alter ego. I think it's a great idea.
I mean, you know, this period that we find ourselves in, it's really challenging. And I even myself found myself saying to my husband, I don't know how I can do this. And you know, I caught myself out, and I always catch myself out when I say something that is unhelpful, and, you know, turn that around. I can do this. I really can. I'll make it work, and we can all make it work. We've just got to find little ways to find joy in the day, because we will never get this time back again. I mean, it's how magical that we get to spend this time so closely to our children and get to know them on a whole new level. And everything else can, you know, the world is stopping. So, you know, we've hit pause. It's so incredible.
We've all been asking for it for a long time. I wish I could slow down. I wish I had more time for my kids. I wish I had time to clean out my wardrobe. I wish I had time to sort out my pantry. I wish, we've been
Yeah,
wishing, and
yeah,
now the
there it is.
magic wand has been waved and we have this golden opportunity. I agree.
Yeah.
And I think what you're talking about is so, so powerful, in that we have a choice in how we look at all this.
Mm,
And the language we use is
mm,
incredibly powerful. And if, I talk to the women that I work with often, we can have conversations around, walking into the kitchen at 5 o'clock and it's like, oh, I have to make dinner. Well, it's actually a choice. You don't have to make dinner.
mm.
Who says you have to make dinner?
Yeah, yeah.
If you're choosing to make dinner, then it gives it a different energy. I get to make dinner gives it a very different energy. What do I get to do tonight? And as soon as we do that, it opens up possibility, as opposed to that heavy burden of have to. You actually don't
Yeah,
have
absolutely.
to do anything. You don't
No,
have to get out of bed in the morning.
no. Well, you kind of do.
Well, do you know what? It actually is a choice. If
Yeah,
you want
okay.
life to go on, if we want momentum, if we want to feel
Yeah,
like we're living, then
yeah,
yeah, we get to get
yeah,
up, but you actually
yeah.
don't have to. So every step
Sure.
we take is a choice. And
Yes.
when you look at it like that, it gives it a very different spin. If I'm choosing to do this, it gives it a positive spin. If I have to do it, then it's like heavy.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's like it's I think with the homeschooling, and I've certainly got, my youngest is 12, but my oldest is heading for 21, so they're at a different end of the spectrum. But still, the time together is, there's so many choices that we get to make in every moment of every day.
Mm.
And maybe we get to choose to go and lie on the grass and watch the clouds go by and have carrot sticks for dinner. That's a
Nice.
choice.
Yes. I like the
That's a
sound of that.
choice. Yeah. I like the sound of pulling on cute undies with little
Yes, yes.
affirmations.
I think I'll go back to Kylie mode.
Yeah. So that's another
Wigs off,
choice.
everyone.
Yeah. So that's a perfect opportunity to talk about the style piece. And I mean, I think there's two pieces. You get to certainly talk about your choice, but I would love to say that lipstick is absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
It is beautiful.
There's another tip when you're stuck at home
Yeah.
isolating,
Yep.
is putting on a bit of lipstick and
Yes.
just make you feel incredible.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. It entirely changes the way that I feel when I
Yeah.
get dressed and put on some makeup and take time to feel like I look good. It
Yes.
changes the way that I show up in my day completely.
Yeah. And so one other choice that I always make is, which pair of power pants am I going to wear? And my customers tell me this as well. I love looking in my underwear drawer. It's that moment as you start your day. How do I
Yes.
want to feel today? Do I want to
Yes.
feel strong? Do I want to feel brave, beautiful, happy? We have a pair here.
Yes. Yes. I love them.
I think today I'm wearing I am grateful, and hence I'm grateful to spend this time with my children.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that decision to make every morning to about how you feel,
Yeah.
and to be super comfortable. I don't know whether you've tried organic cotton underwear. They're just next level comfort. The difference is amazing. Yeah.
I love the idea of mindfully choosing my underwear. I've got to tell you that pretty much every morning I blindly stick my hand in the undies drawer and pull out whatever I put my hand on.
Yeah. Well, you can do that as well. It's a bit of a lucky dip.
Yeah.
How do I want to feel? I'll let my underwear tell me.
Do it that way. I'm an early riser. I get up about 5:30. My husband's usually still tucked into bed, so it's dark in the bedroom, and I just reach in and grab something. So
There you
Yeah, I
go.
like I like the idea of a surprise start to the day with a what message am I going to get?
Yeah, yeah.
Beautiful. So I know you've got a very generous offer for the people tuning into this series, which is
Yeah, so for 20% off store-wide at our online store, which is powerpants.com.au, enter Edwina 20 at the checkout.
then I get to be remembered along with the
That's
power
right.
pants. I love it. That's gorgeous. That's gorgeous. Thank you so much. That's hugely generous. And I've loved this conversation. It's been so lovely to connect with you. And I'm sure that your bravery, your story, your inspiring journey is going to be an absolute gift to the women that have tuned in. So thank you so much.
So thank you. Thanks very much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed that interview. I did. I did. And I must tell you that after we finished recording, Kylie told me that she's actually never shared the story of that night when her husband attacked her. And I think that as women, the more, and mums, the more we can connect and share these incredibly vulnerable stories in our lives, the more we empower other women to know that there's a light at the other end of the experience. And with what we're all looking at right now, we're all in a first. None of us have ever been in this situation before with this pandemic that is in essence shutting things down across the globe and confining us to our homes to stay safe. And there is a lot of fear and uncertainty and anxiety around what's going on. However, there are a lot of silver linings and a lot of possibilities. So I encourage you to look for the tribe that is going to keep you in a positive mindset, that's going to keep you looking forward in forward momentum with hope about what we can do and what we can create in this time. And I would love you to explore the idea of if nothing changes, nothing changes. And this is a golden opportunity for you to dive into your passion and share it with the world. Be that a business or be that just from a place of generosity and wanting to connect with other people through your story and through what you are doing in your life. And as mums right now, we can be empowering each other with what are you cooking? How are you homeschooling your kids? How are you keeping the playful and the fun in your life right now? What are you doing to step out of anxiety and fear and into possibility and hope? So please, wherever you can, leave a comment under this video, or if you're listening to the podcast, you are so welcome. In fact, this is your invitation to connect with me personally. I love to connect with the women in my audience, which means you. So at any time, you are welcome to shoot me an email at edwina@edwinamd.com or leave me a message on Facebook. It's not hard to find me there, or on Instagram. I'm here for you. So together we get to lift each other up and be in that beautiful space of hope and possibility. All right, much love and bye from me until next time.